Hello, Toolkit Masters. Welcome to Q&A Thursday. It's great to be talking to you again. We've got some great things to share with you today. So it's all about the things that you might hate about being a leader. And let's get it out there. Let's get that stuff all out there so that we can have a chat about it. We can talk about it. We can offer some solutions to get around it. But we can just realise that we're human and we all have maybe we all have similar sorts of areas of pain points that can get in the way sometimes. So I'm really excited to have you here. First off, I'm going to ask you if you could just put in normal housekeeping, put in the bottom right hand corner if you can see and hear me, just so that I know that you're all there and you can see and hear me, or just write a yes. That'd be fine. And then we can start going. I'm looking forward to today. I've got some really good stuff. 10 things that leaders hate about being a leader. Let's see which ones resonate with you. Some may not. Some you go, oh yeah, that's happening. Hey, Derek, you can see and hear me. That's fantastic. Great. So I'm assuming that everyone else can as well. Hey, Jack. All right. Excellent. So we've got a few more. Anyway, we can start now because we know that I can be seen and I can be heard. All right, so as I say, I've got some really good stuff to share with you. I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can get a good look at what we're going to look at with the 10 things that leaders normally hate about being a leader. So bear with me for 5 seconds while I share my screen with you. Okay. Okay, live coaching. So what we're talking about today is really, it does resonate with some people, and, you know, some others, they go, oh yeah, there's a couple of those that really resonate with me. So it's the 10 things that I hate about being a leader. So as I say, some of these might be a little bit more pertinent to you than others, and that's okay. And if you do have any sort of ads or, you know, any ways that you've overcome this, then please let us know because we'd love to hear from you. So let's have a look at the first one. So as a leader, yep, we all step into the leadership and we know there's going to be added responsibility. But did we know how much? You know, sometimes that added responsibility can be really overwhelming because it doesn't seem to stop. You know, there seems to be lots of things coming down the pipeline, and I'm not even getting into the people side of the house yet. This is, you know, you've got extra goals that you're going, you've got extra projects, you've got change things coming down the line, you've got processes, you've got all these sorts of things that are coming from the top down, so that it really does weigh you down with regards to responsibility. And as I said, that's not even before we start talking about the people side of the house and how much extra responsibility that brings on. So what can you do to try and counter this? Well, you know, in module 1, we talk about expectations, and we go and see our manager and say, okay, you share with me what your expectations are, and I'm going to share with you what my expectations of this role are. Now, that's a conversation you might want to do more than once, right? So if you get to the point where more things are coming down the line, more projects are getting thrown at you, more tasks are getting thrown at you, you need to go back and have that conversation again. And the reason you need to have it again is to make sure that your manager is able to articulate where are your focused areas, so that you can really focus in on those and not start saying yes to all these other things and find yourself weighed under. So revisit module 1, have a look at Discover Me, have a look at that expectations chat that you're going to have with your manager, and have another one and just say, look, I want to reiterate this and I want to recalibrate our expectations here because this and this has happened. And, you know, I'm one person, so I can't do it all. So therefore, I need to refocus on what the areas of priority are. Okay, so everyone happy with that one? So, yes, okay, we have to make the hard decisions too, don't we? Some things that we didn't have to do. Now, you're there for a reason. You've been given that leader position for a reason. It's because you are going to be responsible to make those hard decisions. We're there to sort of course, we're there to plot the way, to make the directions and decisions. And not every decision that you face is going to be an easy one. Sometimes you're going to have to make some really difficult choices. And that means having some real courageous conversations. Now, sometimes this is a little bit avoided, yeah? So some people, sometimes you have to make hard decisions and you know it's going to upset people or it's not going to be the result they're after. But ultimately, for the long-term vision, it's the right decision to make. And you have to have a think about what is the good thing for the long term. Not what's just going to band-aid over things now, what's good for the long term. And sometimes those hard decisions means you push back on your manager and say, actually, I think that direction's the wrong one and this is the reasons why. Sometimes those hard decisions are pushing back on your team and going, actually, we're not heading in the direction that we need to be. This is what we've got to do. Sometimes it's about an individual. But whatever you've got to do, you've got to make those decisions, because if you don't make those hard decisions, then you will find you'll lose credibility with your team. Now, if it comes with a courageous conversation, that's going to be in your tool suite. So you can download those discussion planners and help you plan how to have those courageous conversations, okay? So don't feel like you're on your own. You've got the tools, you've got the resources. Watch the video in that courageous conversation module if you're up to that now, and then see if you can start having some of those courageous conversations to help you make those decisions. All right, number 3, sometimes we have this unclear direction, don't we? It's a real struggle. So sometimes we think we're going in one direction and all of a sudden it might change. So sometimes you'll have no idea what to do. The path will be hidden. You know, maybe there's some policy changes that are coming down the line. Maybe there's some reorganisation structures in the business. And you're called to go, look, just keep doing this because we need you to keep doing this while we're strategically thinking about this. And you might not be able to see more than 1 or 2 steps in front of you, but you still have to make and move in that direction. I think transparency is really important here. So if you find that you don't have a very clear path because decisions really haven't been set in concrete yet, and you're getting asked to go, well, you know, what's happening? I think the best thing you can do is be upfront and honest and say, look, full transparency, I haven't been given the full picture. We've been told we need to keep going down this direction. There are going to be some policy changes or whatever coming down the line, but we don't know what those look like. So full transparency for you. And then, you know, just help out where you can. It's going to be a bit icky for a while, but, you know, sometimes we just have to put up with that. So that's one of the things that leaders do hate, is that unclear direction. And it could go on for a period of time. I think if it goes on for too long, I think you have every right to sort of start prodding for a bit more clarity. So if anyone's got any thoughts or queries or agree with all this, please just write in the comments. And if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to write those too, because I've got some of my team members are looking to see if you're writing any questions so I don't miss them. All right, so what have we got next? Other people's opinions. Now, you're going to get this all the time, right? You're going to get this. And you know, the majority of the time they mean well. So there's a lot of politics with leadership that you might have realised. People try and push their desires and ideas on you all the time, and you'll be tempted to go their way rather than forging your own path with regards to leading others. And I think sometimes that's a dangerous place to be. Yes, let's take on advice. Let's seek to understand a little bit more. Let's increase our experience and exposure. However, if you think in your gut that something is not right, then I wouldn't go in that direction. So, for example, let me give you a story here. So I think it was quite a few years ago now. There was a leader who was, you know, having some issues with a couple of their team members. And they felt that, you know, their strengths weren't being leveraged. So these team members were in a role where, you know, it probably wasn't in their genius zone and they weren't doing very well. But however, this new team leader could see that they were really good in another space. And I can't remember what it is, but let's say it's IT. So was looking to change them and move them into an IT space so they can really leverage off that strength there. Now, they got lots of opinions and thoughts, and people that have been team leaders for a long time are coming down and saying, no, if they're not doing the job, you need to get rid of them. They need to go. They need to get rid of them. So, you know, this poor new team leader was going, but I can see where I can utilise their strengths. I can see where they can really make a value add and make a difference. So anyway, he went down the achievement at work sort of performance management road, and, you know, pretty much it was not a very pleasant experience for him at all. And he, you know, when he got to me as his coach, he sort of said, what would I have done? I said, you know what, you've got to go with your gut feel. You've got to go with your gut feel. Yes, let's take experience and thoughts in. However, ultimately, you need to try and forge your own path. All right. So that's something that a lot of team leaders hate, is everybody else having an opinion and expecting you to follow through on their opinions when, you know what, that's what you would do. However, what I would do is a bit different to that. All right. Another one that leaders hate is our own failures. But you know what? They're a great pathway for learning. Nobody likes to fail, but if we can just change the language and don't call it failures, call it learnings. Because ultimately every leader on the face of the earth has had some sort of learning along the way. That's how we experience and get better. That's how we grow our skills as a leader and are able to, you know, talk with some sort of credibility because we've been there, we've done that, we've stuffed it up, we've had to go back and redo it, and bang, that's a learning well done. So our own failures, a lot of team leaders hate this. They hate to feel like they're failing, especially when they're new leaders because they're so eager to impress. But let me tell you that every leader on the face of the earth has had a learning or two or many, and that's okay. All right, so I'd rather have a team leader who makes a decision and it's the wrong decision than have a team leader that sits on the fence and never makes decisions. Because that team leader that makes the wrong decision is going to learn and grow and be better and be able to gain from that experience and new skills. So a lot of team leaders hate failing, but let me tell you, it is a great learning and you will do it. So just accept and embrace the fact that there will be some failures along the way that we can learn from. All right, the responsibility for other people. So we talked about responsibility earlier in the piece, and that was responsibility about the new tasks you're getting, the new goals that you have to achieve, the deadlines, the expectations, all those sorts of things have been heaped up. Now, this is the responsibility of other people. So, you know, I think it deserves its own spot. So responsibility of the task and responsibility of the people, I think, deserve their own spot. So the weight begins to fall on you as you lead because you start to feel responsibility of those in your team. You know, you start to gain relationships with them and start to know them on a personal level, and then you start to feel, you know, some level of empathy and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, it can be a big burden, and especially if you decide, you know, you want to change positions or you want to go somewhere and then you feel like you're abandoning those team members and all sorts of stuff. So it's really, really interesting about the extra responsibility of other people. So not only do you then gain relationships and all that sort of stuff, but then you have to consider everybody in your team rather than just yourself. And you might have been a great technical expert before you were team leader, but you only had to think about yourself. Now all of a sudden you have 5, 6, 12 people you're looking after, and they've all got different personality traits, and they've all got wants and needs, and they're all having little bickers and fights at some point, and you're all the one that they're going to come to all the time. And that's a lot of responsibility. So some leaders hate that. But let me tell you, if you can go through those modules on the Unlocking Portal, it will help you become somebody that empowers others. So you're not there to answer all their questions. You're not there to babysit them. You're not there to do all that sort of stuff. You're there to empower them. So how can you empower them and give them that sense of self and build the capability of them? Because that's what you want to do. Ultimately, you want to see your team as replacements for you. So how are you going to build those people to replace your job so then you can move on to the next job? So you're continuously developing them. And hopefully that would help you see it in a different light. So another of the top 10 biggest hates of leaders is realizing that you've got an influence, and sometimes that's a little bit overwhelming. So leaders realize that every action they take, there's an impact on those around them. So your influence goes beyond your wildest imagination. And sometimes you don't want to influence anybody anymore. Sometimes you don't want people copying what you're doing and replicating what you're doing. It's like, no, just do what I say, not as I do. Well, you know what? That's not going to happen. So let me tell you right now, you have a major factor of influence over your team. So if you miss lunch, they're going to feel guilty having lunch. If you come early and go late, they're going to feel like they need to do the same thing. If you are having a hissy fit because something's happened wrong with one of people's machines or whatever, then they think that that's okay to have a hissy fit. So everything you say, everything you do is being watched, and it has a level of influence. And sometimes that can be really overwhelming. So it's like you have to do the right thing even when no one's watching, because someone is always watching. Okay, and that can be quite overwhelmingly put pressure on people. So that's why I think it's in the top 10 hates, is the level of influence you've got. And I think some people don't understand that early in the piece. So let me just tell you, if you think you've got a level of influence over your team, you times that by 10. So they're watching you, they're watching what you do, they're watching what you say, and you're creating the norm of what's okay in that environment. Okay, what's the next one? All right, so there comes a time when you're empowering and you're, building the capability of your team, and then all of a sudden it comes time to go, you know what? You've spent all this time building others up, you're getting them into the right positions, you're building up your talent pipeline, then you've got something new you're moving on to. But you know what? You've just spent all this time building them up, or not even them, if they transition on. So you're empowering your team, you're giving them all these skills, they've got the confidence to move on. Suddenly a position opens up in another department that gives them a mini promotion, and you see them move on and you go, well, hang on a minute, I've just spent the last 18 months building this person up and now you're stealing them off me. I've just got them to the point where they are absolutely on fire and now they're gone. So sometimes leaders hate that. But you know what? What you've got to remember and accept is they're having an impact in other places. And that's because of you. They're having an impact in other places. So yes, I think we have to realise that we're a little bit transient with our teams. If you're empowering them, if you're building their capability, if you're making the best that they can be, and then they finally move up that ladder, you need to be proud because you had a big influence on that. All right, what do we got? When it's your turn to step down, when it's your turn to go, right, I'm stepping down now because I'm going to go and do something else. Sometimes this is difficult. Sometimes when you have to pass the baton on to somebody else and go, I've just spent a couple of years with this team, they're on fire, they're a high-performing team now, we've gone through a lot of crap together to get where we are, now I'm handing the baton over. It's like, really? Sometimes leaders hate that. Even knowing that can be really, really difficult. So I think what we need to do here is have a mindset that you have created a really high-performing team of individuals that have come together and now they're working really well together and producing the results that they need to produce. And you've had a big influence on that. You're going to take a lot of learnings from that. You're going to be able to move that into, and those learnings that you've taken, will be able to transfer over to your new role. And maybe you can even be a mentor and coach to others because you've been able to do it so successfully. So maybe, again, we need to change our thinking around a little bit with this one. Then we've got people potential that is blinded. Now, I find this really, really frustrating. So what do I mean by this? You as a team leader can see potential in some of your team members, right? And you have this desire to see people change because they have so much potential, but they fail to live up to their potential sometimes. So you can see how good they can be, but whether it's self-doubt, whether it's bad attitude, whether it's whatever it will be, they fail to live up to their full potential. So sometimes it's not easy for us to draw it out as leaders. So what we have to realise, I think, is we learn we can't create change in others. We can only try and coax it out. And there is going to be some people that you will see their huge potential, but you just will not be able to coax it out of them. It just won't work. So, yeah, I think we have to be mindful that that's just the way it's going to be sometimes, and that's okay. Okay, so what have we got? Let's just have a quick recap of what are 10 things that most leaders hate. So more responsibility with regards to task. You know, there's lots and lots of responsibility to come with that. So then what I would suggest to you is keep having those expectation conversations with your manager and really focusing on what's important. So you can push back on things that come down the line and you go, you know what, that's not my priority and I don't have the capacity to do it. I can do this little bit, but that piece will have to be handed on. We also talked about making the hard decisions. So not every decision you're going to face is going to be easy. You're going to have to make some really difficult ones and use the tools that you've got to be able to allow you to do that. Sometimes you're not going to have a clear direction. So you'll be walking down this pathway and you'll only be a couple of steps in front of your team because you won't know anything more. What I would suggest there, be transparent, be open, have that communication, keep the communication going. And then if it gets to the point where it's just ridiculous, then you need to go and start asking for more questions and start prodding. The other one is the desires of others. So, you know, if other people are telling you their opinions and thoughts, yes, let's listen, but you act on your own integrity, your own values, and what you think in your gut is right, okay? And if you make mistakes, then we talked about failures. They are learnings, and everybody does them, and that's okay. We also talked about having that responsibility of other people. So you've got responsibility of a team now, all different personality traits, all wants and needs that are different, and you have that responsibility. That can be really, really tough. So remember in Module 2, we discover my team. That's discovering your strengths and the weaknesses of your team and setting expectations of your team and a team vision and all that sort of stuff. That's going to help you to be able to get that relationship with your team that you can build and build and build. And you'll see some gaps and areas of opportunity in people that you can help and value add to. Remember, your influence is about 10 times more than you think it is. So people are watching and doing what you're doing and watching what you're doing all the time. Sometimes that can be put you under a bit of pressure, but it's just something that goes with the job. And remember, if you've built somebody up and you've got someone as a high-performing team member and they're on fire and then they get stolen away to a different department, well, then think of that as a good thing because they're having now an impact in other places. So that's working really well. And then, of course, the second last one was you stepping on and passing the baton over. Sometimes that can be really tough because you spent a couple of years building this team up and feeling really good about it. And now they've offered you another position, probably with a team that's stumbling and they see that you as a great leader because look what you've developed. You know, sometimes that can be difficult, but take it as a you know, you've done here what you need to do. You've left your legacy. Now it's time to move on. And then, of course, the last one here, which is you know, being able to see the potential in people that they just can't see themselves. And as much as you try and get them to change, they just don't change. I think we have to accept as leaders sometimes that change is too hard for them. We can't create change in others. We can only coax it out of them. And if they're not going to change, then there's not much else we can do about that, unfortunately. All right. So there's our 10 things that team leaders hate the most. So is there any thoughts or questions about those? Do you have anything to add? Is there anything else that you think you would put on there? I know there's some that you might not resonate with, but you know there might be some that you do. So let me know what you think while I am starting to bring you back and stop the screen share. So bear with me for 2 seconds. Turn the screen. There we go, back. All right. So is there anything there that that you found was really, really helpful? Jack, especially number 8, fantastic. Excellent. What was number 8 again? Let me have a look. Number 8 was, yes, the transition of others. So when others are starting to leave the business. So you spent all this time building this team member up and getting them to the point where you think that they're on fire and they're really value adding, and then another department says, oh, you know, this person's a high performer, so therefore we want to get them in our talent pipeline and move them on to the next role. So yes, that can be quite frustrating sometimes, but I think it's really good to know that you've been instrumental in that person being the best version of themselves with regards to that role. So well done. All right. Okay. Is there anything else? Number 7, Derek, having to push back on team members. Yes, Flick. Is that something you hate as a team leader? Yeah, I think that's a tough one too, especially when you develop those relationships with your team members, and sometimes the team members don't understand. So it's really, really important to have that communication going. But that's a good one, Flick. And Derek, number 7. Let's have a look what number 7 was. 10, 9, 8, 7. Influence. Yes, Derek, that's a big one, you know, and a lot of people are blinded by it. So a lot of team leaders don't realise how much influence they've got. I said a story a couple of weeks ago that I had this manager who had this expectation that all their team leaders would have lunch and morning tea and would come in at normal time and end at normal time. But the way he was working, he was missing lunch, missing morning tea, coming in an hour early, leaving a couple of hours late. And what he didn't realise is the influence he was having on his team by doing that. So I had team members or team leaders that were leaving their bags at their desk and leaving their computers on when they go home because they didn't want anyone to think they'd left at normal time. And yet that was their home time. But they felt so bad about it because the manager was still there. So it's really, really instrumental to be cognitive and conscious of the amount of influence that you've got over your team members. So that's a good one, Derek. Yes, Flick, we all would like to be friends with people, and sometimes that's a really tough position to be in, isn't it? We all want to be able to get on and feel like people like us, but ultimately, and this might sound a bit harsh, but as a team leader, you're there to direct, build a relationship with, have credibility with, but really not be their friends. They're not looking for another friend. They're looking for direction. So your team members are actually looking for you for direction and for support and for the resources they need to set themselves up for success, not necessarily a friend. So, all right. But you have to be able to say no. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe you could do a session on how we influence our team members, both good and bad. Yes, that's a good one. All right. Maybe I'll write that down, Flick, so that I don't forget it. Session on influencing team members. Would everyone like that? Derek, is that something that interests you? What about you, Jack? Is that something that would resonate, do you think? Okay, influence team members. Good one. All right. Are we all here still? Yes, excellent. So I think we are at a point where we're just about done. Has anyone got any questions, thoughts, insights, any successes you'd like to share with us? Then please feel free to write it in the comments bar now, and we'll have a chat about it. So Flick, thank you for all your bits and pieces. That's a good topic for us to do in a couple of weeks' time. Just while you're thinking about putting some questions in as well, I just wanted to let you know that next week I'm going to be in Sydney recruiting some more Toolkit Masters. So it's going to be pre-recorded next week, and the next week's Q&A Thursday is going to be, because this is a question that came through when I was talking to one of the Toolkit Masters. The question was, I'm continuously nagging my team about deadlines and incomplete work, and it just seems to be going on forever. What can I do? So I actually address that next week. So it will be pre-recorded, but I'm addressing that particular question. So don't miss it. I will actually have the link in there for you. I'll send you out one email reminder and then the link on the normal time. So you will get an email at 12 p.m. when this webinar usually starts, and you will be able to link straight into it and watch the recording. And it's all about, I'm continuously nagging my team about deadlines and incomplete work. What can I do? So, you know, he's feeling like that's his main job. It's just pounding. So what can we do differently? All right. Okay, yes. How do we turn gunners into doers? Perfect. Good one. That's another good one. Excellent, Flick. All right. So I think we are all good. I'm just checking my tech here, making sure that I haven't missed anything. Yes, excellent. All right, guys. Have a wonderful afternoon. If you've got no further questions, remember, log in for next week. We've got a pre-recording. It's all about how do you get your team members to, as Flick said, go into doers and not gunners. So we'll talk about that next week. Until then, have a fabulous tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. Fantastic. Have a brilliant weekend, and we will catch up again next Thursday. All right. So until then, bye for now. See ya.